Hello, this is my inner world for this Tuesday. And this note and question, and I encourage you all again to send me in questions, all you paid subscribers, to use your questions on these Tuesday videos. I'll try to answer them just like I would any live question and answer without much preparation. But this was written in response to my essay on brain shame. And because I find so many people have the shame that comes from having a different kind of brain. And I compare it sort of like to what people who have body image difficulties have. They fantasize about their life and what it'll be like when they are size 3 or something. And they, just like women with ADHD, fantasize about organizational nirvanas when everything's clutter free. And they think that's going to make their life feel much better, versus what I'm going to write about this week on Thursday's inner work, I believe, is what this woman is talking about too, which I call yes and thinking. And I think that's what's so important when we have our brain shame moments. It's like, yes, we have difficulties with this. And yes, we will all the way through our life as we get older. Even everybody will. I think everybody becomes neurodivergent as they get older because their brain doesn't work in the same way. And so it's a constant battle for acceptance. My mother was like 85, 90 years old when she'd say, oh, I'm so embarrassed about my brain, forgetting things, versus like, that's just natural. And so that's something we can work on now. So if we get older, we can already have been ahead of the game here. So this woman responded to the essay on brain shame about, the emotional dysregulation is more troublesome for her than the organizational issues. That's where she experiences a lot of brain shame, because she says it's not easy to hide. Well, we don't want to hide anyway. We want to be able to modify what works for us, what doesn't work, the environments that cause us problems, prevent this, but we don't want to go into hiding and masking anyway. She always says, and you could say it about organizational problems or about her issues of dysregulation. She says she finds herself saying, well, once I learn to get control of my emotions, then I'll be able to do such and such. So whatever the issue is, when we hear ourselves say that, we have to pause and say, no, we can't put our life on hold until our ADHD issues change, or this changes or that changes. We have to try to have a life right now that works for us, and to keep moving toward the future we want, but not wait to have a life until that happens. Like we talked about in the Radical Guide, it's like you have the chronic struggles, and then you have who you are as a person. That who you are as a person is something that you have to keep alive and keep expressing while you're working on the other more long-term issues, and separate out those issues from who you really are as a person, so you can have a fulfilling life now and not wait. This woman says she also notices brain shame when she needs to do something and she can't. And I wrote about this in a note this week. For me, the activation, like I'm pressured all week long, but then when Saturday comes, I just sit there and I don't know what to do because of the inattention, the inaction. And so medication can help, but you have to know what's going to get you started again. Sometimes just one little thing to get you moving. I mean, for me, it's like a piece of music by Vivaldi, Winter, or for some people, it might just be writing one text to one person, one little thing to focus, because sometimes you can just sit there and you just can't move. You can't think of one thing to do. This is what she's talking about. She found herself completely unable to sit down and pay a bill a couple of days ago. She said she had managed to walk around the house for probably 2 to 3 hours doing everything else that she possibly could, until finally she said to her husband, I need you to sit here with me so I can write this check. And I love that, because that's what I do. If I haven't been able to respond to an email, I'm afraid to read it, or I'm avoiding something, I just ask somebody to sit there with me so I can have that calm presence with me. Sometimes, we're just filled with a lot of bad feelings from the past, or wounds, or fears that something's going to go wrong. And just to have somebody ask somebody is a really good strategy. So we don't want to wait till we know how to do everything perfectly, till these difficulties disappear. It's like knowing, what do we need to do in this moment to help ourselves? So I thought that was a great solution she came up with for herself. She said she hated when her brain does this, and she feels fully the shame, frustration, anger, because I knew what I needed to do, but I just couldn't seem to make it happen. Well, that is the ADHD. So sometimes we say, oh, I accept that I have ADHD, but, now I have to just learn to do this or that. Well, this is ADHD. This problem with inattention, inactivity, activation is a big problem, especially for a lot of women with ADHD. So that is going to be a struggle, a chronic struggle. So instead of hating it, making it worse, just recognize, oh, here's that inactivity again. Here's the non-activation thing. What do I need to do to address this versus, peeling on and loading on all the negative self-talk around it. And this woman finally says at the end of her email that she's going to experiment with using that whole person language next time, which is, like I said, whole person language. Yes, I have trouble activating because of my ADHD, and also I am, whatever, fill in the blanks, all your strengths. I'm having trouble. I say to myself, it's so weird. Here I could do all these things, but yet I'm sitting here without knowing what to do at all. So these are just a yes and, looking at both sides of yourself. When she says, Sally, remembering to do a thing is part of the struggle, which is true with ADHD. People say, well, just do this, 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 and this, but the difficulty is the difficulty. So making the plan, following through on it, remembering all these things are the things that are so difficult with ADHD. That's why some people say, well, now you're on medication, you have all this therapy, you know what you have to do, then now you should just do it. And they don't know why you're not doing it. So knowing what really is at the core of your ADHD, and that it's chronic, and there's lots of things you can learn to do to activate, observe what makes your brain operate, but not to heap, criticism on yourself when you're just behaving like a person with an ADHD brain. So I think this is a great question, and I welcome the opportunity to hear from all of you to tell me your reactions to this, and maybe at the end of this, and comments, send in your questions and comments and help everybody else too. Okay, bye.